is Friday, February 1st. My name is Judy Herrera and I'm in Agoura Hills, California. It is my honor and pleasure to interview Ken Rose on behalf of the Conejo Valley chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution and Colonial Dames 17th Century for the Veterans History Project with the Library of Congress. This interview is being recorded by Ed Lynch from Advanta Videography and contains the reflections and memories of the veteran during his time in the Army. This is Ken's story. Ken, you are the second son of Daniel and Mary Rose, born in Los Angeles, California. Before your birth, due to the anti-Semitism, your father had changed his name from Rosenberg to Rose in order to go to medical school. He was a physician with a practice in Los Angeles. Do you want to pick up your story there?
Be glad to.
Good.
In Los Angeles, I was born in 1924, November 2nd, and we lived in an area called Boyle Heights, and which is still there today.
Yes.
Later on, we moved from one area to an area called the Silver Lake area up there where Dodger Stadium is in existence today.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to grammar school in that area. I think it was called the Michael Turina Grammar School. Went to kindergarten there. And we left there, and he possibly, well, I guess he was making more money. We bought a house in Beverly Hills. It was a little tiny house, and and I remember because I lived in it for a while, he paid $12,000 for it.
Wow.
He was in the early years of depression, which hit Los Angeles heavily. He had to give up his office in downtown and earn a living being a doctor wherever he could or wherever he wanted to. And he worked briefly for the government under the Civilian Conservation Corps, CCC camp. He was a physician, traveling physician from San Diego up to the Fresno area. And did that, and I had an occasion to feel what it meant to be a Jew in certain situations. We had a neighbor who happened to be the judge in Beverly Hills, Judge Cecil Holland. He was a judge for a long time and lived on the corner of the street we lived at. His kids went to school with us. We had a lot of fun together. He came over to the house one day, and he was crying. And my dad asked him what was wrong, and he said, Dan, I got some bad news for you. They turned you down. And I wondered what it was all about. Found out that the school board, he said, Dan, I turned you down because you're a Jew. Dad had applied for a position to be a physician on the school board, Beverly Hills School Board. And they let him turn him down. Dad decided to take an offer with the government again and went back to U.S. Public Health Service. And he got a commission in Public Health Service and was sent to Cleveland, Ohio, in a public marine hospital. And visited us about 4 times the first year he was there because he was lonesome.
Oh.
And we were too, but we got along. But depression hit us. We did a good job. My mom did a good job. He was quite a mechanic, engineer. He was working on I learned later on in life that he was working on a machine called cardiogram, which I think he would have turned over in his grave if he knew what I'd gone through with the medical problems I had. However, from there, he came back, was lonesome, stayed with us, and a few months later he got a commission with the Department of Interior working on the Indian Service, and decided that if he took the job, we should go with him. And so the family picked up and went to Fort Yates, North Dakota. And we became Sioux Indians, Dakota Sioux Indians.
Nice.
They didn't know what a Jew looked like, but I was a Sioux. I was called Vasuse Vakasha. That's Sioux for, I think, medicine man. That's what they told me. Could be something else, but we'll take that. And
About how old were you at that time?
13,
Okay.
14 years old. I had a wonderful time. I enjoyed it. I played cowboys and Indians with Indians. And I enjoyed their company. Our class of my first year in high school was there, and lasted. And anyway,
North
well,
Dakota, or-
yeah, he thought that we weren't getting our education the way he thought we should have it. He was a well-educated guy that spoke 3 or 4 languages and did well. However, he got a commission out of the public health service back into the out of the Indian service into the public health service, and we moved from eventually hit New Orleans, and we're on the quarantine station and across the west side of the river from west side of the Mississippi. When I lived in North Dakota, we were on the Missouri River, and now we followed the Missouri down, finally get to the Mississippi, and then down to New Orleans.
Wow.
So there we were there at the quarantine station. He was in uniform. The public health service was the medical arm of the Coast Guard. They had a hospital in New Orleans. I went to high school. I was shocked a little bit when I got there. There was in North Dakota, I had 30 Indians and 5 white kids in the class. And down there, I had all white kids. There was no Indians, no black people either, and it was segregated. I was shocked, but I got over that after I got in trouble. Tolerating being very liberal with my neighbors. And I got into school politics and student body officer. Finally, the war came along, and I was 17 and I graduated. I went to school up at LSU. Started LSU as a freshman, and then I became 18 and they wanted me to sign for the draft, so they said, you stay in school. If you join the Army Reserves, you stay in school until you finish. I said, fine, that's for me.
Yeah.
Well, it was the ROTC, so it was still military, and it was a good training. And we were there at a short time, about a year, I guess, and the war got worse, and so they called up the reserves.
Okay.
And in doing so, they sent the new recruits, the new enlistees in the reserves, to basic training to Texas, Camp Maxey, Texas. And there we got our basic training. And we thought that we were training to become, when the war was won, to become Army of Occupation. So we knew our future was set. And then they sent us back to school, and the war got bad, and so they needed more men. They sent us all back to the Army, Army units. I ended up in the 99th Infantry Division. which was originally a Pennsylvania State National Guard, whose cadre had been used to fill replacements for the troops that were overseas fighting. And so it was trained in training in Paris, Texas, Camp Maxey, and they were filling that up with the boys that came in from the STP, Army Specialized Training Corps.
And you have a picture of some of your buddies from that time period.
These are 4 of our guys that had their basic training and went back, and they are just getting ready to be shipped back to Texas to the 99th Infantry.
Very nice.
So I was in B Company, 394th Infantry Regiment, and we trained, and then we went on maneuvers. And after maneuvers, we were sent to Boston to go overseas. And we went overseas and went to England.
So you went on so you were moved from Texas to Boston on how did you get there?
We went on train.
Trains.
Military train.
Okay.
The train that was picked. So we got there, and we were getting ready to go overseas. And we had very little in furlough. I tried to get a furlough, it was a little too late, to see my grandma, who lived in Providence, Rhode Island, and I hadn't seen her in years. And but I figured that when I come out,
See her after.
I'll see her later.
How were your parents feeling about your going overseas to fight at this time?
I don't think that they felt very good about it. My mother, very worried about me, very concerned. But from correspondence, as long as I was not in harm's way, be healthy, be happy.
Okay. So how did they transport you from Boston to your
We went on a
destination?
troop ship.
Troop ship? Okay.
And it was on KP most of the way. The troop ship was controlled by a merchant marine, and we had some incidents there, but it was fun.
Okay.
Try to stay from the seasickness.
Oh, yes.
We got to Southampton, England.
Okay.
And we got off the boat, and we went to a town called, finally got to a town called Bridport.
Okay.
And I guess it was near Dorchester. I don't know the areas, don't remember. And we were there a short period of time, had a little training, and then we got on another ship, which I think this was a French ship, I don't know, it was a smaller ship. And I guess we were in groups. And it was after the invasion.
After D-Day?
After D-Day. Thankful, very thankful. And landed in Le Havre, and got on trucks. We climbed down in full field equipment. We were armed, ready to go. And we got on a landing craft and went in, but there was no invasion. Thank God it was done.
Okay.
Got on trucks and started going east. And we landed in, I don't know the cities, but it was in Belgium. Okay. And we had to bivouac in that area. My first incident outside of being worried about anti-Semitism was right then and there, and we were in bivouacking. One of my friends, so-called friends, tried to kill me with a rifle, and he was going to kill me and shoot me because he said, "You dirty Jew, I'm here because of you, and he's going to kill me. The rest of the fellows there stopped him, and just an incident. I hadn't seen him after that ever again.
Good.
I didn't want to. And that was the first incident. And I had no problems. We were all friends, all buddies, all tolerant, respectful of each other. There was just a few things that came up occasionally, and we overlooked them. We were tolerating it.
So, what kind of food? What was the environment like? What was the weather and the food that you were?
Oh well, we moved up and relieved a division that was on in Belgium, just near northeast, I believe, or northwest of Aachen, Germany, right near the border.
Oh, okay.
And there were some pillbox areas in there. When I say a stream of fortifications.
Okay.
They were all covered with snow at the time because it was cold winter, but they were there. We moved in and took over foxholes when it broke it down, and our battalion, our company spread out over an entire battalion front. In other words, what 3 companies would cover, 1 company covered. And communications were by wire. The phones weren't good, but we laid wire. Our activities were to fix up the holes we were in, maybe build some covers because we had some artillery coming in occasionally.
Okay.
And the tree blasts were injuring troops. And this was part of the warfare we didn't know about. They were very efficient. The shell burst would bust the trees apart, and it was dangerous. Then we did much. All we did was patrol work. Try to locate our own companies, and February we got to move back a couple of times because our positions were pretty well marked before we got there. It was in December. It was snowing, and there was a war scare. We thought we were going to war again. Well, we were in war, but they told us to be on alert. They sent out a few patrols. We had action. We had casualties, and they wanted a patrol to go out and capture some enemies and find out what's happening for intelligence. I was in one of those patrols. We got into this area. It was split up. We were split up in 2 different divisions, 2 different areas, and the group I was in got close, very close. We went out on their front lines, 25 yards, and it was quiet. It was early morning, and I don't know whether we hit them first or they hit us, but things started popping. I'm sure they saw us coming and waited because they were in a defensive position. We were doing what we do. But there was only about 9 or 10 of us in this one section, and we did the best we could. We used almost all our ammunition, and then we were captured. We had to give up, either that or get shot. Most of us were hurt a little bit. A lot of shrapnel, a lot of threw some grenades, and anyway, our platoon sergeant we were with was killed. I'm talking about the battle itself, which I usually don't talk about. But these 2 guys, I'm mentioning this because it comes up later in life. I was pinned down. I was shooting through wherever I could see some movement. And I heard, after I shot, I heard some screaming, hollering. Well, I knew it was doing good. But that's the best I could say. And I saw this action next to me about 10 yards away. And oh boy, these guys are going to go and flank them. They're going to go flank these guys, and we can get out of there. And after they did that, there was shooting at some guys in front of me, 20 yards in front of me, who were closer. Anyway, distance in front of me, started giving up. Don't shoot, don't shoot. And so then they pinned us down, and that was it. Quit or you don't quit.
Right.
Quit or get shot, so we quit. Mentioning what happened in Germany when I was captured, which was when we were fighting. I mentioned that these two guys on the right, on the left, I thought they were going around to flank so we could get out of there. But if I knew where they were going, I'd probably gone with them. They took off. And but I met one of them in 1945 in Hollywood. His name is Hal Malone. I was driving this 36 Oldsmobile convertible that I was driving and passing a streetcar on the right, and I had to stop. I couldn't pass on the right. He was getting off the streetcar. He looked at me, and I looked at him, and he says, "Jesus Christ, I saw you get killed." And I said, "No, here I am." And we got together after that. And fine, took us to what was left of us. There was 7 of us. And to this, their town that they were situated in. And it was interesting. We were all upset, hurt. Some of us were relieved. I wasn't relieved at that point. I was upset.
You took shrapnel, you took hit in your leg.
I didn't even know it. I know it hurt, that's all. And it didn't bleed very much. And there was a German lieutenant that they were playing popular pop music. Glenn Miller was on their record, so it made me feel better right away. And what happened after that? Let's see. They said the war is over for you guys, but we have to talk to you. We have to talk to you. But they didn't do it there. They sent us back. And they put us on a truck. It started blizzarding. It was late, nighttime. Truck went off the road. And the 2 guys were hurt pretty bad. Their backs was very sore. But they could walk. I was knocked out, so I didn't feel anything. And I got up and was going. And they said, we're going to march out this way. And they had a couple of more guards. Except the guys that went with us. There's about 5 or 6 other Germans with the automatic weapons. I saw that. I said, uh-oh, they're going to take us now. And one of the guys says, oh, we still have a grenade. I said, get ready to use it. And so moved over to the woods. They said, halt. Opened it. I cleared the snow away. And we heard this music and laughter in German and music and a lot of fun going on somewhere. And they opened this door, and it was open to a pillbox. Come, let's come in. And so, hey, this is great. We went in. Put us in this room away from their action. It was a stretch. There was a lot of rooms. It was an actual fortification. I don't know how many troops were in there, but they were there. And they took us out of this room one at a time for interrogation. So this is what we figured. And my friend Bill went in there, and he came out all beat up, just beat up. And they said they thought I was a Jew, and he beat me up. And he said, did you tell them? Yeah, I told them, but I'm not a Jew. They thought I was. He looked like he was a Jew. What does a Jew look like?
I know, exactly.
He's a good little Italian guy, nice guy. Anyway, he didn't deserve it, but he got it. They called me in there, and I got, this is it. This is, the captain says to them, lieutenant says to the captain, let's see your dog, let me see your dog tags. I understood a little bit of Yiddish, not German, but Yiddish, Jewish, and which was broken German, what have you. I couldn't understand all of it, but I could understand some of the words. And he says, let me see your dog tags in English. He told him to speak English. Let me see your dog tags. And I said, oh God. I reached in my pocket and I felt it was tape on my top. I had 2 wool undershirts, t-shirts, undershirts, underwear, and 2 wool flannel garment shirts. And the dog tags were taped so they wouldn't rattle. But I reached in my pocket with something I probably shouldn't have carried with me. We didn't take our wallets with us. Gave it to him. It was my Army pay book. It showed that I had received, when I received money, whether it was sent home or not, or that I had been paid for that period of time. And it had my father's name and address, no religion, and that was it. So the lieutenant looks at it, the Soldaten Deutsch, German, sprechen Sie English, don't sprechen, he verstehen the Deutsch. So I'm supposed to be able to understand the German, so I let it go at that. And the guy asked me a few questions and said, okay, go.
Oh, good.
So, before he said that, the thing that later on I started thinking about, he asked me some other questions. Do you know Sergeant Willie Jones? Do you know Sergeant John Black? Do you know a bunch of names? Or Lieutenant, Sergeant, a bunch of names. And no sir, I don't know these people. Okay. And then later on, the same thing happened with names, with another interrogation. And 2 or 3 times that happened. And I thought, later on, I thought about this, and I said, they must be looking for one of their own, one of their spies. Because they had, at this time, they had a lot of troops, companies of English-speaking Germans, dressed as GIs, infiltrated into our units. And they were looking for some of these guys. That's what they were doing. I'm sure they were. Anyway, that happened later too. And later on, I ran it. One of the interrogations, and we were moved back further on before we were registered as POWs. We were moved, and I'm trying to think of the city, but anyway, they took me to this.
Limburg, Germany?
No, Limburg was Stalag later on.
Okay. Oh, yeah. They moved you then from
Yeah.
that camp to another camp? Or?
Well, I did, but let me
Okay.
mention this one thing.
Sure.
This is where I was interrogated. I was called out. My name was called out, and they must, going back to this, my name was called out, and so I went into this little house next to this group of other houses, and there was good-looking, tall German and a beautiful, clean, well-mannered, well-dressed. I think he was a major, I'm not sure. And he says, let me see, in perfect English, let me see your dog tags. And I said, oh, Jesus, here he goes. At that time, I was kind of worn down a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Exhausted. And gave him my dog tags. These are the ones right here.
Yeah.
These here. In fact, you can still see some of the tape on there that were all taped up. And on here it has H, stands for being a Jew, Hebrew. And he says, do you know what it means to be a Jew in Germany? So I said, I heard of some things, but I don't really know. I didn't know thoroughly, but I heard that it was not nice. And he said, if you were in the Luftwaffe, if you were in the Air Force, I would shoot you right now. He spoke it perfect English. And I said, thank God wasn't a flyer. He said, you were in the infantry, yes. He says, you were in the 99th Infantry. Yes, he had it all written down there. Yes, sir. What did you do when you were a civilian? I said, I was a student. Yes, sir. Okay, go. So I went back to where the rest of the Army was keeping me. And I was lucky. I asked this officer, who seemed to be a regular American, where he was from. He said he was from Kansas City, and he is going to go back there after the war, which shouldn't be too long. And he offered me a cigarette, which I took, and he sent me back to the group of prisoners that I came from, where I came from. I didn't ask him where in Kansas City, but I wondered. And so we went to the 3A, I believe. Limburg, no, 12A, which one of the two. 3A, 12A, Limburg, Germany, where from the whole area, there was thousands, a couple thousand troops funneled down to this area. And we got there in a boxcar, traveling in a boxcar. It was very unhealthy, very cramped, very unhealthy. And finally got there, and we were greeted by a British section of the prison camp, and the Britishers were, cheer up, Yanks, cheer up. Have some tea. I'll have some tea right away. They were good, and took us in. I went to sleep right away. But after that, before I went to sleep, I met a guy standing over me. He was the guy I trained with, in fact went to furlough with here in California. He was in the 106th Infantry Division, and he is captured after me, but he was pulled in that area. He didn't go overseas with us because he was had pneumonia, went in the hospital, and he had to stay here. But they made him catch up to us, though. He couldn't get out of it. So what else happened? We were only there a few days, and went through interesting, harrowing experience of having our Air Force bomb a few of our buildings there in prison camp. But we were lucky, and the next day we were gathered in large groups, and they decided to register us as POWs. They were so crowded and so busy, they had civilians doing this procedure. And I was still with the group that I was captured with, and I had my friend who earlier was beat up by a German for being a Jew, which he wasn't. And I pulled him over and I said, Bill, hear what they're saying. They're saying, and listen. And they registered us and asked us our name and home address and up to the point of what's your religion. And I said, and I had Bill right next to me, and I said, I'm a Jew. And the German looked up and he said, not in Germany. You're not a Jew in Germany. I I said, well, what else? She said, how about Presbyterian? I said, fine, I'll take that. And that's what showed up on my record, which I had today too, and felt pretty lucky. Well, I'll tell you what happened. We found out that the food was meager, was bad, it's lousy. Grass soup, a potato. They were undermanned, underfed, and thousands of two different troops, prisoners, different areas, and so they said if you volunteer for work, your food will be better. Mm. So we volunteered. There was about 100 of us in this one group. 100 to 160, I don't know how many. And they were all from various divisions, not from my company.
Okay.
I was, my friends that were with me that knew I was Jewish, I think they abandoned me in this one place. When they called me in and spoke with me, they took off. Well, they went in a different area to be gathered up to. And I never saw them after that ever again. However, I ran into a friend of mine from Louisiana, from school, who was caught. He was with the 395th Infantry Regiment. I was with the 394th. And he was a prisoner at the same time I was. And we got together and stayed together for a long time.
Good.
And so we went from Talag
12A?
12A, that's from Limburg to 12A to this work camp to Perleberg, Germany. That's southwest of Hamburg, Germany, north part of the country. And went by train and uneventful, went there. Took over, we marched through this little town. It was a quaint little town of Perleberg, untouched by bomb. Saw the areas, noticed where the restaurants were and the grocery food establishments were.
Hungry.
Hungry, yeah.
Oh.
And we took over this village, this camp that had 12-man huts, like trailers, wooden huts, permanent fixtures. That some other nationality had been moved out of. How, I don't know. I can imagine. And we had a cadre of guards. Some of them acted tough. They weren't, but they just acted tough. And they made us come out every morning and break us up in groups. And I was in a 10-man group that went to this German garrison that was training in this town.
Okay.
And it was a garrison, I don't know what it's called, but it was there. They had a hospital, German hospital there. And we did various things. Carried coal from the coal bins on my back in a basket to the hospital. And it was as heavy if we made it, so we didn't want to kill ourselves carrying it.
Right.
And we didn't want to kill ourselves getting shot doing the wrong thing.
Right.
But we learned a lot there. If you followed instructions, they have to follow instructions. They have to definitely. Don't stop, no sabotaging. Don't sabotage. You break this, we shoot you. But finish your work first. Finish the work, then we shoot you. And they were the pressure was put on them. The guards were nice. They slapped us around a little bit. They just to show that they had something above us or on us. They didn't want us to escape. One morning they woke us up and had us all march by a body they brought in. He told us he was shot trying to escape. And I thought to myself, well, they must have been damn good shots to shoot him right between the eyes while he was running away. Huh?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So we had a group. I didn't get involved personally. I just escape plan.
Okay.
And they wanted stuff. So I was working in this garrison. I was able to go to the latrine a lot. Americana sold and Scheischen, Sioux Field Scheischen, too much shit. And doing that, I got to an area where they didn't have a lot of prisoners, and I met this officer's kids, and I told them, cigarettes, you know. Heavy smoker then, and the kid brought me the next day or two a handful of cigarette butts. That was fine. We made our own. And then
you were able to get some maps as
I
well.
got found. I don't know what they were. I grabbed them through a window, got a couple of candles, got a couple of knives that way too, and working there also. I worked in this kid. One of these guys was a farmer boy who knew how to handle horses, so we handled horses, and I helped him. Couldn't handle a horse, but I bend their horses. Here, I have horses in North Dakota.
Yeah, there you go. You've been on a horse before.
Yeah. Great, I had a lot of fun. Anyway, I stole dehydrated rutabaga and dehydrated carrots and horse food. I brought it back, and it saved us a little bit. Eventually, I got sick, and I developed, I guess, hepatitis because I was urinating red, blood red, and was yellow jaundice.
Okay.
And the appetite was gone. And so they said, we have to get rid of you. So I figured they were going to shoot me. But there was 3 of us, all got sick. Another friend of mine in this barracks, another guy in another barracks. So whatever we did at the same time because we all got whatever it was. And, or we were weak enough to get it. So they said that we were going to send you back to your prison camp. That's where the SOG 12A or 3A or whatever it is. In fact, I might have when I was finally liberated, or before I was liberated, the guards took off from one of the camps, and we were in, and our papers were up there. I got, I'll go find them. Give them to you.
Good.
And one of them shows where I erased. I was a Presbyterian. I was just a blank at that point, but it still read it. That we have to go back to that camp, and this guard, his name was Herman. He was 65 years old, and he had a rusty old rifle. Because I tell him that if I tried to hold it for him one time when he was getting out of a train or something, and looked at you couldn't even unload it. You couldn't even use it. So it was all right. Anyway, he was a nice guy. Before we left the town of Pearlyburg, he took us to his house. He had to say goodbye to his wife, and she was a school teacher in that town. She made us some soup, and we had soup. Delicious. I didn't want to leave. I mean, it was great. But we went, and we came back, and we hit Berlin. But we hit Berlin 2 or 3 flights below the station because it was all bombed out on top. But the trains start coming in way back the distance and going down below. And the guard says, don't talk to anybody because they won't like to see a prisoner in this area. So we didn't talk to anybody, because I'll get you some coffee. He got us some coffee. And in that area, I met this Swiss International Red Cross officer in a uniform, and in a latrine. So much anyway, he told us that he asked if we're Americans. Yes, and he said you'll be out soon. The war will be over soon. So it made us feel. He just made us feel good. Yeah. And we left there, and we marched out and into the city of Berlin, away from the station, and half the buildings were torn down, a bomb down. All of a sudden there was an air raid. It was nighttime. Herman says, "You can't go with me. I'm going down here into air raid shelter. You sit here and wait." Well, we had to sit there because there was bombs. We didn't. Where could we go? We couldn't go anywhere. Luckily, none of it hit ours in our area at all. It hit close because we were lifted up and knocked down, and the noise was horrendous. Concussion was great, and shortly after it was over, I was still trying to hear something. He comes up and says, "You're still here." He says, "You're still here. Let's go." We went to the Stalag, back to our original Stalag, and said that, and they gave us a Red Cross parcel. That was the first Red Cross parcel, but someone had taken it open, took the cigarettes out. Goodies, you know. Yeah. They had enough food, and now they just wanted the cigarettes to trade. And so I didn't care, and give me that food. And I had to sleep on the floor on a mat, and the mat must have been infested. I got infested with tremendous lice infestation, terrible, and my leg was infected, and I wasn't feeling good. All of a sudden, the guards take off. I was feeling better. Yes. And so let's go.
How come you didn't get too far? What happened?
We didn't get very far. We came back to where we were assigned. Our own barracks. Next to us was the Polish-Russian barracks, and they separated, and they were. You don't want to be picked up by them right away, and they told us that they were going to take us. The Russians were coming in, and they're going to take us through Odessa to be liberated, taken back. They were going to get paid for us to liberate us.
Oh boy!
And so we took off, and we got this little town. And there was Russians got a hold of us, and that's where I said I almost got shot by this Russian lady. Well, almost. Luckily, no. And they grouped us up together, and we escaped from them back to our prison camp. We just took off. We ran into some of their frontline soldiers who were rough looking, real tough, miserable conditions. Anyway, they didn't understand us right away. And then they had a call for somebody to find out if we really were Americans. We had, some of them had a USA on them, and some of them had their Army insignias on them. Mine was on there, cut off. Mine, the German took mine. Mm-hmm. And finally they said, go back. We went back to the camp, and then about 3 days later, this shooting, heavy machine guns on a tank come running up, And there was some outfit, I forgot the name of the outfit, came in to take us back, and they had trucks behind there.
Oh.
They all knew what they were doing. They had trucks. We loaded up and went across the Elbe River to where the American lines were.
Nice.
And eventually flew back from there. Went to a Hildesheim, was a German airfield. And from there we flew to France, and right near the Le Havre area.
Okay.
And I went into a hospital there, 77th Field Hospital.
How were you feeling when you knew that those tanks were American and you were being liberated?
You'll never know. It's the greatest feeling in the world. It was great.
Imagine?
It was great.
Wonderful.
And kind of grateful, very grateful.
Yeah.
Great to be alive. And
what was going? Do you know how your parents were feeling at the time, or what did they know or not know about your?
they didn't know. My dad heard, they got a telegram saying that I was missing in action.
Oh, okay.
And they didn't have the letter that I had sent them saying that I was alive. They allowed me to do that about when I first got to one of the camps, first
Okay.
camp. It was in January sometime. And they had no word other than that I was missing in action, so I kept up this hope. He had a friend in Washington. In fact, in the White House, she was a secretary to one of the officers.
Okay.
And he, having corresponded constantly with his, for being in the government service, he knew these people, and he said he offered to go search for me in the front lines, in the battlefield. He wanted to go search for me, to find me. And
Of course
what
he
would
did.
your
I
dad,
know.
he wanted to, well, I would say the same thing if I was he, I'm
Yes.
sure. Anyway, they said nothing doing. And this he told me later. And when I originally got home, my mother was completely white. You knew her this way.
Oh, yes.
This is when I was an infant. But
Uh-huh.
she was completely white-haired,
Oh,
and she'd gone through hell.
yeah.
And she was also ill. So anyway.
So they rehabbed you at the hospital in France before they sent you home?
In France,
Okay.
before I sent home. I was there a few weeks in the hospital. And I had donuts with the Red Cross that came in there. Had entertainment there. They had some music, actors or whoever they were. And took us back to Boston.
Okay.
And then
Were you debriefed at all, or
in the hospital.
in the hospital?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I was debriefed by
Intelligence? Okay.
military intelligence.
Sure.
I told them everything in detail. In fact, I told them a lot more than I had mentioned. Here was just surface, but details of what happened
Good.
and how we were treated in prison camp. How I was treated too. I thought I was abandoned, but maybe I wasn't. They located my friends, and they were glad I was okay. And so I'm back in the United States,
Okay.
and find out my parents found my mother. They found out I was coming home.
Oh.
Tickled to death, and I stayed in Boston about a week or two, and I was finally on a train home. And it was shocking and surprise for us all, and it was great.
Yes. I imagine.
I had a home for, was it 30 days at least.
Wow. Nice.
VJ Day came in at that point.
Good.
And I was in like this, and that picture. Here I am. Here's before I went overseas. I was looked like that
Okay.
on furlough, And here's what I was.
After,
Yeah.
so the before.
My brother put those pictures together.
That's a great idea. Before and
I have
after,
to
you're
make
so
it into
thin.
that. Yeah.
Uh,
Well, I gained weight here.
okay.
I was 140 when I went in the service, and I was about 160 something when I here, 165 when I went overseas.
Mm.
Not much, a little bit less than I am right now. But about 100, I hit about 120 as a getting out of the hospital.
Okay.
You know, they were sure I was okay, and
When did you find out about your awards? At what point?
awards.
Mhm.
I didn't find out what I was getting or any of this until I got discharged.
Oh, okay.
I didn't even ask.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I mean, I got these in an order when I came home. Before I came home.
Oh, before you came home.
Before I came home from Boston, I got these.
Okay.
This was a unit given to me because I was part of the 99th Infantry.
Okay.
But I was captured before they earned it.
Oh, okay.
And but they gave it to me. This was mailed to me,
Okay.
even though it was showed up here. It was on my
Yes.
record.
So after your leave and furlough and visiting with Mom and Dad,
Yeah.
Where did you go? What did they do with
They
it?
sent me to Santa Barbara, California. Took over all ex-POWs. The whole thing was POWs and other returned injured, but mostly POWs, hotels. And it's just wonderful time.
Nice.
Just food, wine, women, and song. We were all very grateful and careful. And then they decided that we had to go back into service, back into active service,
Mhm.
because Japan was still our enemy. And so they sent me back to an outfit and sent me up to San Francisco.
Angel Island?
Angel Island, port of embarkation or deport, or what? Yeah, and where everybody was coming back from, and to go to work as a PFC in the Army.
Right.
And I was now attached to the Transportation Corps.
Okay.
So I got up there, and a week after I was there, got situated, they put me on KP again.
Mm.
Well, I was studying engineering. I wasn't, I was a good cook. Anyway, I was the first day on KP. This guy starts screaming at me in broken English. I says, "Yeah, you're Italian?" And he was an Italian prisoner.
Oh.
We had Italian prisoners running the KP up there, running the kitchen. They're probably good cooks, but I said, "No, I'm not working for a prisoner. You're my boss. I'm not working for a prisoner. No, I was a prisoner. I don't want to be a prisoner again." And he says, he starts screaming at me. I start screaming back. I said, "Call the boss." I said, "Call your officer. Call my officers." And he did. The colonel comes in there. "Oh no, we're sorry. You don't have to do this. Thank you."
Yeah.
I left right away.
Good.
Then I put me on grocery detail. What was grocery detail? I was, if I was not injured, I would be trained to go to Korea. Yeah, I have a friend that was trained, came back, went on furlough from Arkansas, ended up a colonel in the Korean War. Stayed in the service.
Okay.
And he was lucky. Lucky there, lucky with us, lucky up there.
Oh, good.
And luck is a lot of, and he smarts to be an officer too. And but he was just a PFC when
With you.
he was with me. But because I had the Purple Heart, they didn't want to send me. Well, I was complaining right then and there, but I was hurt.
Yeah.
Sure, I was hurt. They put me on this grocery detail. I had to go in these freezer rooms, pick up the food, bring it out to the officers' homes and wherever I brought it. It was like a PX. My feet started hurting because of the frostbite. And when I was here, anyway, I knew I had they called it Raynaud's disease, circulation Raynaud's disease. And so the doctor on Angel Island says, no, you can't go on service anymore. You can either get out of the Army right now on points, because I had enough points. They had a point system.
Yeah.
Get out on points, or if you want a medical discharge, come with me. You better get one if you want treatment later on. That's all they said. If you want treatment, get a medical. Okay. I took it, and when they discharged me at 50% disabled, which meant $10 a month in money, which was great. And that lasted. When I got discharged, my folks had already left New Orleans. Dad was transferred to San Pedro, back here in California. In San Pedro, he was in public health service, still in uniform, public health uniform, at the outpatient office for U.S. Marine Public Health Service in San Pedro. And the post office building had an office there. The whole floor was a medical office. And they didn't have a public health hospital in Los Angeles, but they had outpatient services. And he had a house. He lived on Terminal Island.
Oh yeah.
There was a quarantine station. The public health officer lived there, because they used to have the ships. They to inspect the ships that came in as quarantined, and
So you took the discharge, and so what year are we talking? Is it 45 now? 40?
It's 45, 1945. October 45 was discharged.
Okay.
And came back to Long Beach because my folks, the house that they had in Beverly Hills, they had sold, but they had rented it out. Oh, I lived in it when I came home on furlough for 60 days, had a good time. Then after that, my dad went back from the quarantine station to the public outpatient office, so he had to come to work every day and didn't want to. It was easier, so they sold the house. And we are living in Long Beach.
Okay.
And I went to the vet hospital in Westwood.
Oh yes.
And just a couple of times I went for a checkup, and so then I went to work. One of my first job was. God, I had so many jobs. I didn't go back to school, unfortunately. I didn't care, and I don't feel bad that I didn't.
No.
But my folks did.
No.
My mother did. My dad didn't. My dad understood how I felt. I had to keep moving, keep running. And I got a job, eventually got a job well, I had a couple of little jobs before I got a car, and got about a 36-year Oldsmobile, and got a job selling appliances, hotel, evaporative coolers, silent sewer oil heating equipment from Long Beach all the way up to Fresno.
Wow.
And I enjoyed it, travel, sell. And production was very low on civilian production, still wartime production.
Sure.
And so it wasn't that difficult if you had something to sell. And set up a lot of dealerships for evaporative coolers from LA on the way up to warm coast,
Right.
inland coast.
Right.
Baker Santa Barbara, all the way up to Fresno. And after that, I got a job. Oh, trying to figure. I did so many different things. I know I was ill. I got sick and had an infection, had a strep throat, and stopped selling on Stop Road. Got well again. Wanted to go back to school. I signed up to go to school, and I couldn't concentrate. I didn't stay. I just get a job selling. Enjoyed meeting people, enjoyed talking. Still do.
Yeah, good at it.
And so I worked for the Philip Morris Company, and I worked out of Long Beach and covered all of Orange County for them, calling on the major retailers and wholesalers. And I felt bad about all the cancer I caused.
We didn't know at the
Yeah,
time.
I did, and I smoked myself, smoked very heavy, and got good sales training. And then my brother had got married, and he was selling cars, and then he and his brother-in-law started a business, electronics business. And I was going to go to work for them. And I got married and finally went to work for them, but it didn't go very long. I decided that it wasn't for me.
Yeah.
And left, and I started working on one of the two things. Either then it was cigarettes or
Fish?
no, frozen food. That's
Frozen
right.
food,
For 6
fish.
years, I was a sales supervisor of Surly Fresh Foods. It was a frozen seafood. I was a fish peddler.
There you go.
And I sold Ralph's Markets. I sold Market Basket, all the chain stores, and it was good. I bought a little GI house out here in the valley. My ex was working in Hollywood area at first for sound studio, and then after a while, I went into business
With your wife.
with my wife, and because of her mother being in the maternity business, I went into a children's shop. That lasted a year and a half, 2 years. I kept relationships with my brother. He made me he was an electronics, but he built a big sign for the outside of the store.
Nice.
It's called Carrie's Children's Shop. My oldest daughter was Carrie.
Carrie.
Yeah. And that didn't last too long, about a year or so, two, and sold that. And
Some balloon packing.
oh well, I started selling some other merchandise because of my grocery store experience. I had contacts in the wholesale grocery business and also retail, and I had worked for placing toy racks into stores. Commission basis, but it made a living, very good. And eventually started to package my own product. I packaged balloons and put it in markets and liquor stores. And I did it all by myself. I had my kids and the neighbors and everybody stuffing balloons in bags, and I learned how to get these buy these balloons that had been used for decorations. And I knew how to shrink them back to normal size. Very easy. And made some money, but not enough, and I had an opportunity to go to work in Texas. My wife's uncle and his brother had a aircraft parts business. They started with the surplus aircraft parts, all the Pratt & Whitney parts. And looking at the sign up there. He was a aeromotive supply in Dallas, Texas. And he says, we have no sons, we have daughters, and we have nobody to take over the business. Why don't you come on over? So I went over there myself in the summer. It was a nice opportunity. And I told, we had just moved into a house in Sepulveda, a little 3-bedroom house. I had 3 kids then. And so we left the house empty, held them to get on the plane and come on.
Oh my.
They came in, we moved into a 2-bedroom apartment and 3 kids, and worked there for about a year, I guess, a little over a year. But left the house empty at the time. Rentals weren't very heavy then. And it was, I learned a lot about aircraft engines I didn't know about. And what you're supposed to do and what you're not supposed, parts they're looking for. And they started computerizing things. The first computerized was the IBM, the cards, the computer cards, the perforated cards. And of course, I didn't know too much about computerizing, but I knew what the lists were to look for. And I knew how to handle it over the phone, so that if they wanted a part. And they sold parts all over the world. And mostly Pratt & Whitney parts, because most of them were the radial engines. And, well, not radio. Well, anyway, That didn't last too long, another year gone by. And so we came back to the house that was empty, and I went to work for whether it was a food company or one of the outfits that I had worked for before. I also sold direct sales, sold swimming pools, kitchen remodeling. I did that for Sears, and that was good commission. It was very good. And then I went into business, silk screen business, art business, silk screening, and making plaques and pictures, laminates, and used to buy used unsold Christmas cards from the printers, publishers, to cut off the seams, laminate them, or have them laminated, put them on the board, sell them at retail for $1. And I'd have kids, high school kids, painting on masonite or burlap, whatever material we could get. And we sold department stores at trade shows. I was sales oriented.
Maybe a good time to wrap.
Pardon me?
Yeah.
Maybe a good time to wrap.
Okay.
Take a rest.
To wrap.
A wrap.
A wrap.
Okay.
So, what would be your takeaway from your time in the military that transitioned you into the life that you led after your service?
Service. Sir, you mentioned service. Service business. My life I was very grateful for my existence at this point. I enjoyed life. I became single, but that had nothing to do with it. I still enjoyed life. I was single my friendship was continued. It was friendship. We're very grateful for my family, my kids, everything. They're still with me.
And you're still with
And,
them.
but
So you earned, they
Earned-
sent this to you, but you earned the Purple Heart
yes,
for your valor in wounds. So your legs and your frozen feet,
Yes.
in your captivity in Germany.
right, combat infantry badge and good conduct, the good conduct medal. That is a great
It's
one.
important.
And then the other ribbons that my time deserved.
So what this means is you earned the Purple Heart 2 times.
Yes.
Very nice. Thank you. Well, we thank you for your service, Ken. It's a wonderful legacy that you've left for your children and grandchildren. Thank
Well,
you.
I thank you for that. Thank you for being here.
Of course.
Thank you very much.
I know.
You have an amazing story.
It is.
Am I
Amazing.
still recording?
Yes, you are.
Oh my.
Yeah.
No, we're still working it. No, I lived the good parts of it all. There's some stuff that you don't want to talk about because
So,
we lost. I learned that war is no good. I don't want anything to do with it. I don't want my kids to have anything to do with it. My kid, Bill, who's a doctor of psychology right now, was a pot-smoking kid, and I had nothing to do with that, but I tolerated it. I let him do it. He is treating people now that have all conditions like this. He was a long-haired kid. I have a picture that I can show you, but I don't have them here. They're upstairs. He had to register for the draft. He wasn't going to because he heard some of my stories, and also being a kid in that era of time, he didn't think the Korean War or the Vietnam War. The Korean War was, he didn't know anything about that. The Korean War, the Vietnam War is what he was,
his time.
yeah, there's something ringing in my pocket.
There is.
And we'll just try to turn this thing on. There you go, turn them out.
Yeah.
I know so little about this new technology that
No, you're doing
I
good.
wish I had it when I was 20 years ago. Computers.
Pretty amazing stuff.
Oh, could have
Yeah.
sold a lot then.
Yeah. Yeah.
When my kid didn't want to register for the draft, I said, you have to register for the draft. That's the start of everything. You can be happy or unhappy, but you be happy. And he says, I'll go away. I said, no, if you have to go fight for something that you don't believe in, that is not a war, I'll take you to Canada. I was single at the time. I'll go with you. I'm ready to travel. I love to travel. Okay, Pop, okay, but go to school. And he went to school
Good.
and finished up PhD. And he's a good boy.
You have a lot to be proud of.
This is Tommy. Tommy, that's.
You're so pretty.
You have a lot to be proud of.
I love my kids, and they feel the same.
I feel like you just have an aura of tolerance about you that despite all of the things you and your family have endured, you're very tolerant.
Well, I try not to be prejudiced. You get sort of worked over, and but you don't change your attitude once you live through it. I'm grateful to get out of the situations I was in. Try to stay ahead of times is the best thing.
Yep.
Like my dad used to say, you keep your mouth shut, they'll think you're a philosopher.
It's a wise man there.
So, but I try not to keep my mouth shut.
Thank you so much
Yeah.
for taking your time and
Oh,
to
gosh.
share your story with us. We really, really, really appreciate it, and we certainly thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
You too.
I had it way easier than you did.
Oh, gosh.
My service was just like a vacation.
Well, that's the way it should be. That's the best I can say. Wars are for those that, just not for humans, that's all I can say.
Yeah, I know.